Welcome back, and thanks to our new listeners for joining us. Today's episode is called Bogeys in the Boardroom, How Elite Performers Recover When They Miss the Green. It's about the signals that something's off and the skills that it takes to recover, reset and keep playing at your best. Welcome to the Debrief Show, the place for leaders who want to bring out the best in themselves, their communications and their teams. I'm Dee Clayton, your host and multi-award-winning executive coach and trainer. As a newbie to golf myself, I just learnt that bogey means you've missed the par, the expected standard. For a casual player, that might not matter, but for a high performer, it can be a sign that something's not quite right. In business, and certainly in golf in my case, we all miss the mark at some point. But it's those that catch it early and bounce back faster that experience the most success. My guest is Bevis Moynan. He's an author and a high-performance coach who works with both leaders and elite athletes. He's the author of Emotional Resilience, Your Guide Through Turbulent Times. He's also a trainer of NLP, timeline therapy, and motivational mapping. Hi Bevis, welcome to the show. So tell me, how did you get into working with elite athletes and performers?
Thank you so much for inviting me, Dee. Really appreciate it. And yes, it's been a bit of a circuitous journey, really. So I started in the personal development world in 2008. I did an NLP practitioner course, and then I started my coaching business in 2010. And not long after starting my coaching business, off the back of some methodologies around both NLP and motivational mapping, I found myself in a local workshop for golfers on the inner game of golf, which was delivered by a chap called Jamie Edwards. And I was listening to him, and it was really interesting. So I was in the audience thinking, well, I've just done my training. If I was him, I would say this next.
Yeah.
And then he did. And then I kept thinking, well, if I was him, I'd do this next. And then he did. I was like, oh my gosh, what he's doing is delivering this content tailored to golfers and amateur golfers.
Nice. And
I realized there was 80 people in the room, all of which were probably going to need help and support with their inner game and the mental side of golf. And I remember going to speak to a chap called Jamie Donaldson, who's now a good friend, and at that time was my golf coach. And I said to him at the end of the workshop, which was brilliant. Obviously, Jamie, you know me from our coaching, but you don't really know what I do. I do a similar thing to Jamie Edwards, and I help golfers. It was really interesting because at that point, I didn't have a website or a business card. It was literally a month after my NLP master practitioner course, and I think Jamie was a little bit skeptical, and it was really fascinating because he referred. The result of that was two things. A, he had a cup of coffee with me, and actually I ended up doing a bit of work with him around his career, and which helped him transition into something called Aim Point Grit. So he's now a green reading coach at Woburn. So it helped him in his transition. And he referred a chap to me who was actually the guy sat next to me in the audience, which was really, really quite sliding doors moment.
Yeah.
And I helped a young chap called Chris, who had the yips with chipping, was struggling to actually hit a chip shot, even though his technique was.
Tell us what the yips are for those non-golfers.
Yeah, so that's where you just can't physically execute a golf shot, even though your technical ability is there. So he could do it in the driving range, but when it came to playing on a golf course, he just couldn't execute that shot. And I was able to cut a long story short, I was able to help this particular chap, Chris. I then ended up doing some work with Jamie, who's referred a lot of people to me over the years, one of which was a Welsh golf coach called Matthew Tipper. And again, to cut a long story short, Matt Tipper became European Coach of the Year in 2023. And he referred a Polish golfer to me called Adrian Maronk 5 or 6 years ago. And Adrian's gone on to win 4 tour events. He's now on the Live Tour.
Wow, fantastic. So you can say that's work when you have to go and follow all his games, right?
Exactly. Which is a joy and sometimes nerve-wracking, but enjoyable.
Fabulous. That's amazing. And you've worked with, how did you get your cricketer client as well then?
So same route really. My background was in cricket originally. So I wanted to be a professional cricketer. And actually the real route of my work started from my own, if you like, failure to become a professional sportsman. I wanted to be a professional cricketer. I had a county trial I was at Loughborough University, and I didn't turn up because I didn't want to fail. And I know now that I was running a self-sabotage pattern. But of course, as an 18-year-old, I had no idea about that. I just ended up in a nightclub the night before. So really, when I, age 30, overcame those patterns and went, oh my God, I feel so much different. It opened up opportunity for me. And it's a very difficult thing to describe, but I almost felt a duty to help people not to make the same mistakes I had. So, and that's what I tend to see. A lot of my clients are either sports people or business people, people in a career transition or people in a transition in their elite sport. So yeah, it's always enjoyable work.
So that relates quite a lot to presentation skills. There's often high performers that I work with, and we know they can speak, we know they can present, they've practiced their presentation, and then when it comes to it and they're asked a question or they get a button wrong on Zoom or a webinar, then they kind of freeze and can't do any more, or their hands start shaking and they can't hold the mouse anymore, despite, well, partly because they're such high performing individuals, they seem to suffer from this a lot. So when you work with high performers, what are some of the challenges that they uniquely face or more often face, maybe from a coaching point of view, from a sports point of view, but also from an executive point of view?
Yeah, so I think you've just highlighted it. Elite performers, by their very nature, tend to be really hard on themselves, and they tend to have incredibly high standards. Now, that's great, and actually that drive for perfection, for excellence, has got them to where they've got to, typically.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is, over the years, if you have a drive for perfection and a tendency to be very hard on yourself if you don't reach those standards, you're subconsciously anchoring in anxiety. So what we realize is, a lot of the time, the high performers I work with need to soften, not the drive, but soften their, in golf, we call it the post-shot response or the post-round response. In your world, it would be about, actually, if you can forgive yourself from any mistake you make as a speaker, the ego loses its grip, and you're not then going to be as anxious or nervous about delivering. And that's not, as we know, it's not an overnight thing. There are some things that feel like quick fixes, but actually it's a journey, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're both NLP trainers. So, we're talking a few NLP words as we talk about. In fact, it sounds like my timeline is quite similar to yours. So and the journey's similar, isn't it? That you see these mistakes that you've made in the past and go, if only I'd known that when I was younger, maybe I wouldn't do that. But that makes us who we are, doesn't it? Now, I've only just taken up golf in the last, I'm not sure how, but let's say year or so. And I'm kind of a casual golf player, so I've not really committed to lots of practice. In fact, my other half is always like, if only you practiced, you'd be really good. I'm like, well, I'm enjoying it. Isn't that the goal? But it does seem to me like some golfers really do seem to get super upset about maybe more than other games, which is a bit weird. Do you know why that is? It particularly golf where people are harder on themselves? And if so, why is that?
I think thing is, with golf, there's no one else to blame, which is if you're in a hockey team or a football team, there's a team element, whereas golf is a very individual game, and the ball isn't moving, it's static. And of course, there's usually somebody watching. There's not always lots of people watching, but there's usually somebody watching. So that unique element of it's individual, there's no one else to blame. There's a static object, nothing's moving. Yeah. So, which tends to raise our own expectation levels of what we can do. Because actually, in my mind, it's one of the most, if not the most complex games out there. But of course, we don't necessarily see it like that. My son, who's just taken up the game, he's got half a set of clubs, which are not exactly, they're not fitted for him. They're not necessarily the right length. I've been playing golf for 30 years, and yet he expects to beat me the second time he plays. So that's the other thing, the expectation level, and the understanding of there's so much to learn. Uphill, downhill lies, side lies, wind. There's so much. Never mind driving, chipping, putting, pitching, iron play, wedge play. They're all different techniques. So it's and I actually think you're already successful if for me, one of the keys for being an amateur golfer is the ability to enjoy playing badly. Because if you can't enjoy playing golf badly, you're not going to enjoy golf most of the time.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I feel that I've really got the mindset advantage, the NLP advantage, which is one shot is another shot is another shot. I'll try my best on the next shot. And I'll tell you this, there's 2 swans that live at the end of the golf course that I'm playing at the moment on hole 18, and my shots are not accurate enough to be able to be responsible for whether they land on the swan's head or not. So the second time I played the course, well, first time I didn't know there were swans there, so that was fine. Next time I knew there were swans, and then everything went into the pond, and it was just going all over the shop, and people were watching, like you said, and it anyone else would have. I was getting a bit stressed. Even I was getting stressed, actually, even with all my techniques. So I was getting stressed. So the third time I played, which was yesterday, I was like, I cannot have some phobia about the 18th hole with the swans. Oh, before the second time I played, I went to the reception and said, has anyone ever hit the swans? And he said, yeah, they have. And they had to, kill one of the swans. So I was like, oh, so it's a real thing to be worried about them. So this time round, I managed to just do a strategy where I just played a few extra shots to get around the swans. So I've got over that. But I can see how you could just build it up in your head like that's a worry, or you can't. People say they have a favourite club and they're not very good with their 7, but they're great with their 9. Like, well, how can you have a favourite club? And I don't know. I think golf lets you do that. But getting back to executives then in business, how's this relevant to them? How is that high performance mindset relevant to them? What are they doing? What are some of the behaviours? Do they have a favourite club? What's the equivalent for them?
Yeah, well, I think golf mirrors life in lots of ways, and that high expectations. And we both know from our motivational mapping experience that energy and motivation and drive. So with high performers, you tend to get high motivation, high energy, high drive, high standards, all of which is great. And again, we'll have got elite performing executives or business owners to a certain level. So I've got 2 brands, Magenta Coaching on my own personal brand, Bevis Moynan. And one of the things that we've seen a lot of is this super high expectations, working really, really hard to get there. And our Magenta mission is subtle. It's about helping people to enjoy success. And the emphasis is actually on the enjoyment.
Yeah.
Because most of the people that I work with have no issue in creating external world success. They don't need help with their business. In fact, I had a client recently who's super successful CEO, but actually it's some of the personal things he wants support with that maybe he doesn't feel comfortable opening up with to a business coach. Mm-hmm. So it's about that broader view of success and enjoying the life that we've created, because the pattern that's like anything, the pattern that gets you the external world success doesn't necessarily lead to the enjoyment of it. Yeah,
and that's critical, isn't it? So we talk about the high performance cycle. Can you just explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I've alluded to it slightly in that those super high standards leading to super high expectation, then leading to, and it's something I mentioned talk about in the emotion resilience book, those high standards, high expectations then lead to internal negative dialogue because often the high standards or expectations aren't realistic. And I think it's Tony Robbins says that this expectation is the mother of disappointment. So then we get this embedded sense of disappointment, and our mind or the ego is telling us that actually if we beat ourselves up, it'll help us perform next time.
Yeah.
But that only works for a short period of time, and then in the end we build up anxiety, and then people need help from either me or you around speaking, or me in the coaching work I do, because they're then in their own way and they don't really know why they're in their own way. They're just feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And they may well still be able to perform at the level that they're performing at, but it's taking an internal toll.
Yeah.
And it's often that. Yeah. No, and probably nobody else is seeing it. They're just feeling it.
And they might not be able to label it, right? Because if they hang out with other high performers, that's perfectly normal. They don't know that isn't. Well, it is normal, but they don't know that's not. There is a better way, I suppose, is what. For sure.
And unfortunately, often if it's left, it'll lead to some kind of crisis point before people ask for help. And obviously, we both want to support people before they get to that point.
Yeah, before the burnout. So those internal voices and the disappointment cycle, that's where when I talk about the public speaking monkeys, I talk about those little monkey voices that say you're not good enough. that often come from childhood, don't they? And they can set these, well, if you're not good enough, you have to keep trying to be better and better and better. And then one day you'll be good enough, whatever that is. But you're right, it gives good motivation to get success, but then are they happy doing that? Because they're motivated with a stick, aren't they, rather than the carrot?
And I think that's as good a description as the elite performer cycle as I could have come up with. That's it. Often in business, in sport, there's a drive that's that strong, it's not balanced. And if we look at success as living a balanced life, often elite performers are successful in one sense, but not necessarily living a balanced life. It's causing people to consider and reflect on what success is and what it actually means for them. And to live that balanced life that they're maybe now looking for, it does involve often letting go of some of those monkeys.
Yeah, I love that word, balance. Yeah. So we're both NLP trainers, but you do a lot of NLP training yourself, don't you? So you train other people in NLP all the time. So tell us a little bit about NLP for those that don't know what it is. How do you describe it and what are some of the benefits?
Yeah, sure. Wow, that's always a big question, isn't it? That one. It's the one we dread. How would you describe it? I think my favorite definition of NLP is that, it's neuro-linguistic programming, and neuro is about the mind, linguistics about language, verbal and non-verbal, and then the programming is the patterns that we run mentally and emotionally. My best description really is that NLP helps you to focus on what you want, A, to decide what you want and to define success, and B, then to focus on what you want consciously and unconsciously. And a lot of people who aren't familiar with NLP may be consciously focusing on what they want. That's what I want, but unconsciously their programming's taking them somewhere else.
Well, sabotaging it, like the story like your story, isn't it? You wanted something, but then the other bit of you is sabotaging it.
Exactly. And I used to work back in the day in the leisure and the fitness industry, and we'd see that every January. Conscious intention, I'm going to come to the gym 3 times a week. Mm-hmm. By March, we've got lots of direct debit members who aren't turning up.
Yeah, that happens a lot, right?
Sure.
And I've done another show actually on setting goals with Kate, so that's a good time for people to check that one out if they haven't already seen it. I was going to ask you about then the NLP. How do you use the NLP techniques to help with high performers in business and in golf? Yeah,
great question. So I think it's funny when you've been trained something a while, you don't really reflect and think about what it is you're doing. It's just the mix of coaching. However, we do a lot of work helping people especially elite golfers, to overcome past scar tissue. As we've described, golf is a unique game in that those combinations of the static object, high expectations, and people watching. So a lot of golfers end up carrying embarrassment, humiliation, shame, worried about feeling that way, which then even elite performers, and you might think, well, crikey, they can't be feeling that way, but because of the high expectations, they definitely can do. So releasing those emotions and the doubts is key, because for elite performance, you want to have 100% confidence. So my intention is, can we get an elite golfer with 100% confidence that they could have a winning performance? That doesn't mean they're going to win, but it means they're confident they could play to their potential. And that involves then using those NLP or timeline therapy methodologies to release previous doubts or scar tissue.
Scar tissue. So like not necessarily physical scar tissue, but emotional scar tissue. I like that description.
Yeah, and some of that can be the monkeys from early on in life, or it can be as simple as, I remember one of my golf clients, he played very well in Wales and it was soft and wet, and then he went to play in Spain and it was firm and bouncy, and he just had a shocker because it was completely different conditions, and he lost a lot of confidence and then needed some help to go into the next tournament with the same level of confidence he had in Wales.
Yeah, I've just had a good score actually for me, so maybe I should stop playing now. So so have you got some good golf tips then? Now you do all this, you must be able to give us a few golf tips, please.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that one. So I'm certainly not going to give any technical tips. I mean, I suppose the nice thing about the work I do with elite golf is I do play golf myself. So I'm currently playing off 5. Been as low as 2.
And you're off it. So you're playing on 5, And your
Yes.
office is?
Oh yes, of course. So my office is based on a golf course, which again isn't by accident. So yeah, I think actually my tips would be to enjoy it, to accept failure, but also to have a goal, have an intention, because that can often motivate you to get outside your comfort zone. So for me, I played in a county open last year, and I played in our county scratch knockout, even though my handicap's quite high for that. And actually, those experiences that are on the edge of our comfort zone are often the ones that where we grow personally. And I think I'm a big advocate of us all exploring the edges of our comfort zone. And golf's as good a vehicle for that as any.
Really? Yeah. I mean, my stretch recently was just getting out there on an 18-hole course that I'd never done, moving from 9 little ones to 18. That was a big...
I sorry for interrupting. I think that's brilliant because I can completely relate to that with some of my work. I've got an MD that I'm working with who's a super perfectionist, and I've yet to get him on the golf course. And that is a task, because he actually, as a young man, was a very good sportsman. So actually, but he's struggling to go back to being a novice at something. And there's something...
You're absolutely a novice with golf. There's very few sports where you can't actually do anything to begin with. Most things you can pick up something, can't you, and be half good at lots of things without trying. But yeah, I think golf is really a leveler, isn't it, in that sense? Yeah,
and there's a lot of joy that comes from being a novice that we've often forgotten, because I often say, why are kids happier than adults? And in my belief system, it's because they're constantly learning. They're in the learning and their stretch zone all the time. Whereas as adults, we like to get cozy and comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me about, we were talking about, burnout. And I know over COVID, a lot of people experienced that realization maybe of that lack of balance. It gave them that chance to think, maybe I'm not happy, I'm successful, but maybe it's not balanced. You wrote a book over that time, didn't you?
I did, yes. So my mother passed away during COVID. So not COVID. So she was diagnosed with lung cancer, and I had the difficult situation of going to see her and traveling up to Yorkshire and then not being able to go in the house, and actually stood outside and realizing, because you speak to somebody on the phone, but it's only when you see them you realize the impact of the disease. So that was challenging. And at the time, a bit like all of us, I was like, well, what do we do? All the training that we were doing just finished, because we were doing it all in person. And one of the things we decided to do was just to run some webinars on emotional resilience, just because it felt like the right thing to do. So the combination of the webinars and it's strange how some of the webinars were about anger and frustration, and some were about disappointment and sadness and hurt and guilt and regret, coupled with what was happening with my mum at the time, kind of really fed I didn't realize it, because I didn't realize I was writing a book. It kind of came later when we came out of COVID, and I kind of revisited the material and went, hang on a minute, there's quite a lot of content in here that feels pretty aligned to share. And then it took, it's quite embarrassing to say, but it took me 4 years to actually get to the point where it was ready to be published. So it was only published at the back end of 2024.
I think 4 years is very good if you're doing a full-time job as well. I'm still trying to rewrite my first book, and I'm part-time at rewriting it, maybe a couple of hours a month, and it's definitely 4 years at least.
Yeah, well, I'll take that. It was I definitely put it down and picked it back up again a few times.
But it sounds like it was helpful for you as well, a bit of therapy as you were covering those topics that you needed to think about it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think about the start and definitely the journey at the start of the book and at the end. So it sounds like a very morbid book, but it's about resilience, and these were topics that were live for me. So I finished the book during jury duty last summer, and my dad passed away whilst I was on jury duty, and I wrote the last chapter on love in the jury room which was also a very frustrating experience because I think we spent 11 hours in court out of 10 days. So it was quite ironic because every time I tried to distract myself by watching Test cricket on my phone or reading a book, it was like we got another delay. And in the end, I went, right, no, I'm going to finish this book. Otherwise, we're never going to leave the room. It did feel like that was
the universe sending you a message to get done, right?
It did feel a bit like that.
Have you got a copy of your book there to show us?
Yes, yeah.
Because when when I had a look at it, that cover just really jumped out at me. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about how you chose the front cover.
So it's a painting by my mother. So she was a very good artist, and when we
might be on podcast too, so maybe we should describe it as well. So could you read out the title of the book and just maybe describe the front cover as well? Yeah,
so Emotional Resilience, Your Guide Through Turbulent Times. And the front cover it's a picture, and I think it's a young lady. Some people have different opinions. It is a wraparound, actually, because so it's a wraparound because the painting is a dark painting of 3 different faces. Depicting 3 different emotional states. And it was quite funny when we came to publish, in that Joseph, who was helping me to get the book published and the cover done, sent me some visuals through. And actually what he sent through was a face with different emotional states. And I went, oh, that's interesting. And I went upstairs and took a photo of the picture that's on our landing, which was obviously done by my mum, and sent it back to him. And he went, that's perfect, let's just use that. And I went, okay. So it was nice for me because I actually remember sending out to our coaching community a picture of the front cover and asking for what people thought of the title and the front cover. And I got some really nice positive feedback. I got some not so positive feedback, but I felt really supported from people wanting to help. And I feel connected to it because of my mum's artwork.
That's lovely. And isn't it lovely to share that with people? Otherwise, it would have just stayed in your house, seen by your family, and now everyone else gets to see that. And it's something really personal about your story that's in there that shows other people that they can open up as well. So I think that's really useful, actually, especially, I mean, obviously you're a guy, right? Especially for guys to talk about feelings, I think is really important to role model that because it's not necessarily that common. Do you see a lot of difference in the sexes in your higher performing coaching?
So I think you're onto something there, and I think I work with both men and women. The majority are men, and there's a journey, isn't there? And actually a big part of the coaching journey is that trust and vulnerability to open up, and that is a huge part of it. I think more than half of the coaching journey often is that ability to open up and just offload and know that you're not going to be judged for whatever the challenges that you're facing mentally, emotionally, physically. So it is different. It is different for men and women. There is a difference, and I think the reassurance to know, and it is also changing. I think in my experience, the men I've worked with have been more comfortable opening. There's almost a readiness. It's a difficult thing to describe. It's almost like a light switch goes on and somebody's then ready to find the right coach or the right support to talk about their thoughts and emotions. And it's so important because actually our thoughts and emotions are a huge part of our quality of life, huge part of it.
And our performance at work, right? I mean, when people come with a performance issue, it's often, very rarely is it a skills gap, because if it's a skills gap, normally they've sorted that out themselves. It is that emotional or self-awareness or emotional intelligence gap or whatever you want to call it that's often in the unconscious mind, so they can't see it or label it or know what it is that needs working on, isn't it?
Couldn't agree more. And in fact, with elite performers, I would say is very, very rarely a skills gap. Occasionally it's a lack of awareness of a skills gap. Thinking about sometimes with golfers, they can get emotionally attached to certain areas of their game and miss something that's not quite at the level it should be because there's an emotional decision making rather than more factual analysis, and statistics can sometimes help in that space.
So as your independent observer, that role as an observer then is working at that point, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course then being challenging and asking with rapport, with empathy, challenging questions. Because at an elite level, not only is it about performance and enjoying the journey and enjoying success, it's also about having the right team around you. And that can involve difficult decisions sometimes, both for elite golfers and elite business people and elite executives. Because if you've got really high standards, you want to be working with a team that match those high standards.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that earlier, actually. So these high performers who are putting a lot of pressure on themselves, they expect all their team to be high performers as well. So are they causing, I'm not sure if I want to use that word, but modeling poor behavior for their teams as well? Is that more likely to see it in their teams?
Wow, I mean, that's very timed, isn't it? It's interesting where these conversations go. So yesterday I was on a Zoom meeting with a chief exec of it's a startup company, but it's grown incredibly in 2 years. It's a golf company. And they're doing incredibly well. And they've now got 12, 14 employees, growing quickly. I'm going to use some motivational map jargon here, so apologies. So super, super high expert, 35 expert, incredible high standards. Now, he is a founder-led business, and he's just taking on board a leader who's very experienced, who's a high director, likes being in charge, likes control, likes influence, has lots of great influencing skills, and also a high star, not such a high expert. So actually, the business is built on this particular business owner's super high standards. So he does want those carried out throughout the business. But of course, he's at that point where he also needs to soften and allow others to contribute and get that balance right of keeping the standards, but realizing not everything has to be done exactly the way that some things are essentials and some things are idiosyncrasies. And finding that gap is so important for business growth.
Because otherwise they're not going to have any ownership, are they? If they have to do it his way or her way all the time, that's just going to be demotivating, especially for the director type that wants to do it their way, probably.
For sure. And actually, it seems to me, and it feels like it could be a good fit, but there needs awareness bringing to that relationship. So what we were talking about last night was quite timely.
Great. Lovely. Thank you. Gosh, the time seems to fly by. I don't know how that happens all the time. I could just talk to you for hours more. Tell me, as we begin to wrap up, if people, I guess a couple of questions. First, how do they know if they're a high performer and maybe need to take some steps? What are some signs, alarm bells or quiet alarm bells?
Yeah, good question. So I think alarm bells are a sense of lack of energy or some of the personal relationships suffering that are important to people. I think they're really key because, of course, with elite performers, we have wives, husbands, fathers, mothers, daughters. You know, we've got that family dynamic that's super important. Health, and of course, ultimately, just a sense of discomfort or disquiet, which is probably the main one. And I would say to anyone who's thinking about exploring coaching like this, you'll know within 45 minutes whether it's going to work for you. So it's like, if at the worst case scenario, you turn up online or in person, you have a session, you go, oh, it's not for me. That's okay. You've not lost anything. So it's always, but yet the benefits could be huge, could be life-changing.
It's that making that step, isn't it? It might take them years till they get to the point where they want that 45-minute call to see if it's right. But yeah, it's being brave enough to, you've got to admit something, that you've got to admit the gap to probably have that call in the first place. So that's a challenge. So what's the small steps you think people could do, even if it's not that 45-minute call yet, but what are some little baby steps that people could take? Obviously read your book, because that's fantastic. And that's available on Amazon. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Really good question. I think when I've spoken or done workshops, I often ask the question, who here has enough time for themselves? Very few hands go up. And that's not necessarily in rooms full of elite performers. That's just modern life with phones, with internet, with children, family, business, work, sport, etc. Just balancing all of these competing priorities. One of my favorite phrases is that 90% of problems are at the level of thought, which means that only 10% of problems are actually problems. And I think if we take that as a philosophy, if we realize that 90% of problems are at the level of thought, if we take some time out for us and we go for a walk with a dog, or we go and meditate for 20 or 30 minutes. It's amazing how many of those problems disappear. Or clarity emerges where previously there was confusion. So Stephen Covey said that if you're going to go and chop trees down, you want to make sure you're in the right forest. Or as one of my clients said, make sure you got a chainsaw. So I think that working on the mind as a tool and a device by proactively taking time for self, and that doesn't mean watching telly or eating pizza. It means actually having some quiet mind time. It's so important.
And so difficult to do for most people, and getting less and less of a skill as the generations come through. Like they can't, literally, people don't spend 2 seconds without picking up the phone or something, do they now? So I can see that that's going to be a greater and greater issue or skill to have. Or
for sure. I think, and often going back to the work we both do, sometimes there's an emotional block. Sometimes people feel guilty for taking time for themselves.
Yeah, should be doing this other thing, should be achieving this other thing.
For sure.
Difficult for stillness. Thank you. Have I missed anything? We've had a chat and it seems to have flown by. Is there anything I could have asked you that you would have preferred that I did ask and haven't yet asked?
No, this has flowed really elegantly and beautifully, and I really enjoyed the conversation. So no, not at all. It's been lovely speaking with you.
Lovely speaking with you. And when I'm a few more years down the golf experience, then I'll come to the golf course and have a game, and you can help me out with a few coaching tips, perhaps.
Actually enjoy that. If we're golfing or having a cup of coffee, either way, I actually enjoy the conversation.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the show. We really appreciate you joining us. And a big thank you to my guest today, Bevis Moynan. You can find out more about him and the work that he does at bevismoynan.com. His surname is spelt Moynan. And you can also check out magentacs.co.uk. If you like to watch us in action, you can find us on YouTube. Just search for the Dee Clayton channel and look for the Debrief Show. We're also on podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever else you get your podcasts. So please, you can tune in there. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, we would love you to follow the show and share this episode with your friends, your family, or a colleague who might find it helpful. That's your debrief for today. Catch you on the next episode.